Good afternoon. Another area of discussion on Sudraka's Mrichchhakatika will focus on the plot structure and the flaws in the plot that will be related to the theatricality of Sudraka. So Sudraka's theatricality Mrichchhakatika with special reference to the structure of the play and the flaws that are there in the play. So the play has been widely appreciated. We know that Sudraka's Mrichchhakatika has been widely appreciated for so many areas, appreciated for the art of characterization, for the plot structure, for the innovative use of the characteristics of Prakaran, one type of play among Das Rupaka. But in spite of the skill and attention of the author, there are several slight flaws of construction that have crept into the play. So this can be due to reclension of the play. As the play has evolved, last 2,200 years, the play has evolved. So these flaws of construction might have been because of the reclension, because of the evolution of the play from the manuscript to the written form, and after that to the copies and adaptations. But these flaws of constructions are not so serious. They neither interfere with the play, nor do they make this play a flawed one. Rather, the flaws contribute to the attractive nature of the play and contribute maximum to the theatricality of the play. So we need to attach uh, no importance at all to the flaws in the play, and let us all talk about the merits of the play. And these merits are there in great length and embrace the complex and varied situation of the play. A complex plot is there. Even two plots are there that are interwoven in the play. So I have already talked about the uh, characterization. Okay, mainly the author who has represented Charudatta as escorting Vasanta Sena to her house. And on the stage, after such a long journey without even a word of description. So Charudatta in the play is heard describing the moonlight when he starts. And as we were reading the play, we noticed that immediately, abruptly, he is shown arriving at his destination. Just talking, say, for 2 minutes of stage time, he covers 5-6 kilometers. It almost reads as if some portion is missing from the text. Some brilliant poetry might have been lost because of this. Towards the end of Act 1, again, we find this flaw. Even in the second act, we find such flaw. We see Sambhaka leaving the stage after declaring his resolve to turn into a bhikshu. And almost immediately, we are told that he dressed as a monk, was rescued by Karnapuraka from the death of the enraged elephant. And this is rather putting us stretch on our imagination. So how can this person be there at that time? So some kind of problem with the time is there in the play. This is rather putting a stretch on our imagination. For no sufficient time appears to have been elapsed to enable Sambhaka to change his dress, get his head shaved, and don the paraphernalia of a Buddhist monk. So it is reported on the stage, no? So we find a sequence of action so suddenly happening that it does not give any space to Sambhaka to get himself dressed as a monk. Even in the next act, where you see Sarvi Laka is shown as a bugler. So it looks very strange that he should not have known whose house it was that he was breaking into. So he's standing before Charudatta's house, but he does not know whose house he is breaking. So he appears to be a resident of Ujjaini, and that to a thief. So usually the thieves do recce of the spot, but we find that this thief has done no recce of the spot. He does not know the inhabitant of the house. So since he was very intimate with Vasanta Sena's maid and counted Rehbila and Chandaknaka among his friends, it becomes impossible for us to accept this, that he does not know the house of Charudatta, when Charudatta is such a famous man of Ujjaini. So he knew Charudatta by name, and even if he had never seen him, it is just unbelievable that he should not have known where this first citizen of Ujjaini lived, so that he failed to recognize his mansion, even when he has inspected it carefully from the outside before effecting his entrance. So in the fourth act of the play, we find when Vidushaka describes the splendors of Vasantasena's mansion. So Act 4, you remember, contains a beautiful description of the mansion of Vasantasena. Much seems to have been left to the imagination of the audience, since the things described are so varied and numerous. So first, the architectural splendor of the house that is mentioned in the speech of Vidushaka. We find that the architectural description does not match the flow. There must be some lines missing. So even the description of Vasantasena's mother and brother. So we are in a state of improbability that even a small portion of them could have been shown on the stage. The scene therefore partakes more from the nature of Sarvya than Drishya composition. In Sanskrit plays, we have a holistic composition and a Drishya composition, means setting is described. So when he is in the house of Vasantasena, he is describing the setting. More focus should be on the documentation of the details. But instead, he is using his imagination to describe so many things. In the thunderstorm scene of Act 5, you find this scene very interesting because of its excellent poetry. And especially in this scene, we find Sudraka's art of poetry almost touching the standards of Abhigyanam Shakuntala, standards of Kalidasa. So similarly, thunderstorm scene of Act 5, many of the descriptions are purely conventional and completely discordant with the time and place. So we know that it was a dark night with the moonlight obscured because of the clouds that are there hovering on the sky. So we listen immediately after, there is a description of the sun being obscured. How can the moon and the sun be obscured at the same time by the clouds? So time is passing. So it might be that it is late night, and after that there is this rising of the sun. But here we have no kind of reference to the time, and it is simply the conventional poetry that is being used. And then the sun comes up, peeps out, and then there is similarly the rainbows come, gleaming across the rainbows at midnight. So how can you accept the presence of a rainbow in the midnight? So even in the sixth act, it does not appear why Charudatta should have left so early in the morning, arranging so that Vasantasena should follow him, since he could as well have proceeded to the garden in her company in the same carriage. So it seems to be improbable. So appointed date and time is given to Vasantasena, chariot has been sent. So it seems improbable. Why should Charudatta not go to the same destination by the same chariot? So it was possible. So Vasantasena could have been escorted by Charudatta himself. And furthermore, why is Charudatta leaving so early in the morning, arranging for Vasantasena's arrival? And he could have accompanied her, but that too again becomes a part of the plot. And mistaken identity is only possible. Situation comedy is only possible because of this carriage incident. The carriage was a covered one, and nobody could even have seen them. So the poet, perhaps Sudraka, perhaps saw it necessary of making Vasantasena travel alone. We therefore expect that he should have invented some sound reason for Charudatta's early and abrupt departure. So in Act 9, again we have some kind of flaw. Charudatta is being tried of murder. So his silence in this scene appears to us to be quite puzzling and out of place. We do not know why he is silent. When he said that he had gone to the garden, he should have said that he had gone to the garden at that particular time and he has returned and someone was there with him. So he could have said that. But his silence appears to us as quite puzzling. The poet somehow wanted to have him adjudged guilty on the circumstantial evidences. But he has thereby overlooked the resulting weaknesses imparted to the character of Charudatta. So you remember the jewelry was given by Vasantasena, and this is known to the mother also. So this man should have defended Maitri and said that yes, Vasantasena has left the jewel on that particular day and given the jewel to Rohasena. He should have said, but he remains silent throughout. Further, even if we assume that Charudatta was far too much weighed down by the thoughts of his own condition to offer a proper defense. So he's very sad. Vasanti Sinha is dead, and it may be the probable reason that he is out of his mind. We accept that even at least the friend Vidushaka Maitri at least should have explained the source of the ornament, and he should have defended Charudatta as it was a matter of life and death to his friend. But it is really astonishing why this does not happen. And he also submits. Why the truth is not told, we do not know. The silence of Charudatta and Maitreya both uh, can be regarded as flaw, but this flaw might have been consciously done by the writer Sudraka in order to move the play to the necessary conclusion and lead Charudatta to the scene of execution. Silence of Maitreya appears to be much more inexplicable than that of Charudatta. But nevertheless, all these remain flaws, major flaws in the construction. Apart from these flaws, okay, if we just ignore these flaws, we can say that this play can be viewed as a well constructed, well structured, well proportioned, and a harmonious story, where one act naturally arises out of the other, and each incident possesses some bearing on the development of the plot. So we remember Aristotle talking about the structure of the plot, that is primarily the soul of play, where each incident should be tied up together with a probable and necessary sequence of action. So here we have this construction, the structure that is well conceived. Although the play lacks some kind of proportion, it may appear to you to be too long. We took 10 hours actually to read the play as a whole. So it appears to be too long. So it might be a flaw, but once again, we must be reminded of the fact that this was perhaps the only form of entertainment to the people of 2nd century BC, and might have been that this play had been performed on different court occasions in serial, like our serials that happen on the TV. So it is like a long dramatic opera that is taking place. Even Western critics like Dr. Ryder perceive a lack of proportion in the play and calls this play too long. So I must defend Sudraka. This play may be shortened if you just separate the play and the main play from the exuberant poetry and just take out some lines from the play. The play can be shortened. Play can be performed in 3 acts. Okay, can be performed in 3 hours. So that is possible. But then we have to sacrifice the excellent poetry that is there in the play. Sometimes it appears to be very long, and Western critic with the views of Aristotle in mind that a play should happen in a single revolution of the sun, and the action that is presented should happen within 3 hours. So this play can be said to be too long, and there can be some kind of flaws in the continuation of action, especially Act 2 to Act 5. So these contents can be reworked on, and we have seen several adaptations of the play. Adaptations like we find in Bharat Ek Khoj of Sam Benegal, that is based on description of Mrichchhakatika by Jawaharlal Nehru in Discovery of India. So the representation for the televised serial, it takes around 45 minutes of stage time for the presentation of the story of Mrichchhakatika. So we have also seen that movie by Shashi Kapoor, Utsav, that also takes the story of Mrichchhakatika, is of a length of 2.5 hours. So within 2.5 hours, 3 hours, the play can be performed with the full story inside it. So it is also possible, say, Habib Tanvir's adaptation of Mrichchhakatika as Mati Ki Gadi, Mrichchhakatika. So that adaptation also is not too long. So this play, as far as theatricality is concerned, can be performed within the span of time, and reworking of the play should take that into account. So we cannot judge a play that has been written some 2000, 2200 years ago with the standards of play that we now see. Nowadays, films have become short, even 10 seconds plays performed nowadays. So we have seen that in this play, the plot is contrived, plot is complex, so many stories are interwoven together, making the contents of these acts very theatrical. So we have to admit that the play is a long one, almost has an epical proportion, but we can also say that this is not too long for presentation. And actual performances of the play has demonstrated that it is not because of the length, but because of the poetry. It is not because of the action, but because of the poetry that the length of the play is extended and appears to be boring or tiresome. As we have seen, the rapid succession of events, incidents keep the audience interested, and the spectators are always kept on tiptoe of expectation, of suspense throughout. So we have seen that the play, even learned doctor appears to have missed the point that the play is an Indian play rather than a Western play. So Professor Ryder's comment on this play is perhaps not accurate. Act 2 to Act 5 uh, should not be regarded as unnecessary. Say the description of Vasanta Sena's palace, it appears to be so contradictory, but where we have the description, beautiful poetry, where we have an excellent philosophical discourse on space, on the philosophies that were developing during that time. So we can say that these are also related to the vastu of the play, the structure of the play and the content. The second act also serves to very important purpose. We cannot just reject the second act. What is the main purpose? In the first place, we have this Sambhavakar's debt being paid off by Vasanta Sena, and this deep sense of gratitude for his for this disinterested act of kindness makes him render invaluable assistance to her later on. We also find the rescue of Sambhavaka effected by Karnapuranka, narrated to the poet. So we have all these actions interrelated. So we cannot say that these incidents are not connected with the plot. Dr. Ryder said that the second act has little connection with the main plot. But we can see that all these incidents actually contribute to the making of the main plot. So neither is the third act unnecessary, for without that robbery's sequence is very interesting, especially in a play like Mrichchhakatika. Without that robbery, there could not have been the exchange of the pearl necklace for the lost ornament, which is a subsidiary incident, I understand. But then also the jewelry play a dominant role in the making of the plot. So which is a subsidiary incident, the stealing of the jewelry, serving solely the purpose of again illustrating the boundless generosity of Charudatta and deepening Vasanta Sina's passion. And because the jewelry is stolen, we also find the character of Duta and how Duta is sacrificing her own jewel. Even the fourth act is necessary, a sequence of the third, and the fifth of the fourth. So everything is tied together, showing Vasanta Sena proceeding to her house, lover's house, in the garb of Abhisarika. The only really unessential portion here would be the passage descriptive of Vasanta Sena's mansion and of the rainy season. These are two long passages. One is the description of Vasanta Sena's mansion, and the rainy season description of the thunder, lightning, and there are flaws, of course, in that. But they do not cover more than the sixth of the play, sixth part of the play. And other four acts of the play, they definitely justify why should they be there. Say Act 6, 7, 8, 9, these are very essential for the development of the play. So as a stage piece, okay, the theatricality of Sudraka is remarkable. We are seeing that different incidents, action, characters are staged in the same scene without any kind of shifting of curtains or portions of stage property. So this is a part of Sanskrit dramaturgy where the language reveals the setting, and even the scene change is revealed through the discourse, the dialogues of the characters. So you should not look at Mrichchhakatika from the Western viewpoint of a well-made play of the naturalist theatre. Rather, it is a theatre that is artistic, okay, concocted by the poet, as the entire story is poet's invention and is presented in dramatic terms. In Natya Shastra, we have come across two words. One was Lokadharmi, the other was Natyadharmi. So the plot of the play, the structure of the play belongs to the tradition of Natyadharmi. while the characters and the incident situations that are presented belong to the common life, representation of the real life that belongs to the Lokdharmi tradition. So this mixing of the Lokdharmi with the Natyadharmi tradition is another remarkable feature of this play. And this kind of mixing up of scenes, incidents, give it a modernist type of awareness on the part of the audience. Because the audience is involved in the production of the story. They have to fill in the gaps in between the dramatic hints and weave their own story. So throughout the play, we have seen all these incidents are represented and carefully brought together to a conclusive ending. So the critics, the Western critics, especially during the colonial period, had analyzed Mrichchhakatika with reference to the European plays. And they did translate the play and accepted that this play, of course, belongs to the richest tradition of world drama. And because of their critique of the play had succeeded among the Western audience. Several adaptations were made. I remember an adaptation way back in the Romantic period, adaptation of Shakuntala. Mrichchhakatika's adaptation is even running on the stage in the 20th century, 21st century. So the difficulties in staging the drama did appear, and we must remember that as an old play, like Plautus's Pot of Gold, we don't have an ending of the play. Either Plautus did write an ending, or he left the ending for the audience to frame, or he kept on changing the ending of the Pot of Gold. We do not know. But the last portion of the Pot of Gold is not there. But because of the absence of the ending of Pot of Gold, the Pot of Gold has become more popular among the audience, especially the audience who want to see something new in Plautus's Pot of Gold. Similarly, in Mrichchhakatika also, the Sanskrit dramatic tradition might have allowed the Sudraka to improvise on action, introduce new situation and incident, and try to interweave these in an action. Any kind of meaningful theatrical representation of Sudraka's Mrichchhakatika should depend on an awareness of the dramaturgical tradition as presented in Bharatamuni's Natya Shastra. Number two, it should take into account the contemporarity of the play, how the play can be situated in the present context, or the historicity of the text, how the play can be presented in the context of 2nd century BC. In both cases, the play will succeed. The play will become a thing that will catch the conscience of the audience and make it successful on the stage. So we can conclude by saying that, agreeing to the view that Sudraka's Mrichchhakatika, because of its plot construction, because of its structure, in spite of the flaws that are there in the play, has remained one of the most theatrical plays that the Indian subcontinent has ever produced. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, you can ask. We can have a short discussion on this topic again, if you want.